All right, y'all, we are off to get our bees, off to get our new chickies. Willow Rose, you ready?
Yes.
Something we have been waiting for quite some time. We are super excited. After we drop off our bees, we'll let them out of the netting, get them situated tomorrow, and then we're off again to go get a batch of chicks. But before we actually go to the bees, we are stopping at our very favorite donut shop. We know what we're talking about when it comes to our donuts, right, Lou?
Yes.
We were without it for almost a year due to the tornado that destroyed it and a lot of our favorite shops. But luckily, almost everything is back in motion, including our favorite donut shop. So stop there and then it's off to get those bees.
A few more weeks of shows, then I'll get off the road. We'll finally plant my feet somewhere. We'll make some place our own. The ringing in my ears, the voices that I hear, they all disappear when I'm right here next to you.
Look at this.
Next to you. As a chorus swells, the waves starting to paint light to the dark. Oh, the future in my heart. Oh, night feels just so far in love for the first time.
Fern.
We set out to save them all.
After we got our brand new bees and baby chicks all settled in, we did what all brand new beekeepers would do. Off to the living room we went, where we folded up our old rug and unrolled the newest.
Ooh. She does.
Look how pretty the honeysuckle vines are. I mean, they are climbing up the entire tree.
So it seemed, fairest I had ever seen. What I'd give to leave this war. Find you on another shore.
We had really bad storms this week, and as we were looking out the window watching the strong wind blow, we forgot that we didn't secure the bees. Thankfully, our strong household head volunteered to brave the cold rain and make sure they were battened down.
And I fell upon my knees as I watched you out.
Well, hello again, everybody. So we got quite lucky this morning. As one does, I was perusing through Marketplace and I found a couple pieces of furniture that I really liked. Now, I always have a lot of trepidation when I find something I really like, because more times than not, they end up not being available. But guess what? They were both available, and I didn't even realize it, but they were actually from the same seller. So I am borrowing Blake's truck. Also got some drop-offs and pickups as far as the kiddos are concerned. So we're going to kind of kill two birds with one stone, but I thought I'd bring you along with us and share with you the newest finds that I have found. Well, her pink princess, Well, good morning once again, friends. Today I thought we would delve into the subject of plants. There are a couple of discussion questions that I get quite frequently in my comment section, and one of the topics that I get quite frequently happens to be concerning my indoor plants. So I thought that we could take a couple minutes and I could maybe answer a few questions that you may have. Oh, you got cheese? So one of the main questions that I often get is, how do you keep your plants so green and so healthy? Before actually talking about the care of plants, I always think the topic of which plants you should buy in the first place should actually precede talking about the care. So let's talk about which plants I would recommend if you happen to ask me what plants should you get if you are a first-time plant owner. I'll say this, if you want one? You want one? I'll get you one. So I was much like many of you who happen to be feeling like you're on the outside looking in as far as the plant world is concerned. And I decided I would try my hand at gardening, at least indoor gardening, that is. And so I did myself a little research as to when to water plants, how to recognize when they need water. And then I just went to one of my local nurseries and found a plant that I was most attracted to, and I brought her home. Now, if you know anything about plants, you will recognize why this is comical. The very first plant that I decided to purchase was a maidenhair fern. Yeah, you can probably guess the end of that story, but definitely not a plant I would recommend if you are in the beginner category. So some of the plants that I would recommend, and these are based on what I find most readily available and easiest to find, that is at least in my area. And if you guys have any that you may know of or would recommend, I would so love a discussion to start in the comment section, and we can encourage each other through this process. So if you've got any suggestions, feel free to type those out. And any questions that you may have, maybe if you have the answers to them, if you could help me out and answer them as well. I would love our community to grow in a supportive way. And I think this would be a really great place to start. But I digress. So the first plant that I would say that is really easy, and I would put it in the entry level category, and that is your ZZ plant. The next very common plant and available probably anywhere that sells plants would be your golden pothos. One that a lot of people think are interchangeable, which they absolutely are not, is your philodendron hederaceum, and that is your heart leaf shaped philodendron. This is known because it has a heart leaf shaped leaf. I personally would say that the pothos is a little easier to care for than your philodendron hederaceum or your heartleaf philodendron. Next plant that is pretty highly sought after, and if you do any plant research, you will probably see the name of this plant, and it is the Monstera deliciosa. These get really massive, so if you've got a smaller space, I would probably lean away from this plant. That's another thing that you do need to consider, is how large the plant will actually grow. So your Monstera deliciosa, if you live in a smaller space, then I probably wouldn't recommend this one. Now, if I were to be making this list a few years ago, I wouldn't put this on there because they weren't available like they are now, but a really cool and easy to care for plant that I would also put on this list would be your philodendron Florida green. I've been seeing these everywhere lately. I actually paid a pretty penny for mine quite a few years ago, and they were in the more rare category. The next one that I would say is a lot of your Hoya varieties. Now, Hoyas can normally be distinguished by their thicker, waxy leaves. These leaves can hold in a lot of moisture, making them pretty drought tolerant. Now, there are a ton of different varieties, but I will say most of the ones that I've seen in the big box stores, they have been in the category of easy to care for. Now, not all the time. Most of the time, I would say the big box stores stick to easier varieties to care for. If you see any with a monstera in front of it, a pothos in front of it, a philodendron, your Hoya, like I said, the ZZ plant, those are all pretty good categories that I would recommend.
You are the captain of the ship. Your whole life is led to this for the coming war. Steady boys, it's time we separate the men. If you wanna see your homes again for the coming war. Gentlemen, put down your fear, 'cause it won't do you any good here. Through the waves of an angry sea, the soldiers stack like leaves beneath.
This isn't absolutely a necessary task, but it's something that we like to do because it really helps them see and ultimately enhances their life. So we do prefer to take this extra step in cutting the feathers of our hens who have trouble seeing due to their really large crests.
Never wanted fame, I just had to tell my story. So look the other way, 'cause we were fighting to get home.
Hey, sweet girl.
That you leave this town till you bury that dream beneath the frozen ground.
You ready for dinner?
It's a bitter taste that you swallow down, 'cause you wanna be happy, you just don't know how. And this feels like someone else's life that you were living in. This feels like someone else's body you were trapped within. So maybe you should do what makes you happy. Forget all those lessons that you learned and just go dancing. Life is much too short for you to miss it as it's passing. So don't let it happen, don't let it happen, no. Maybe you should do what makes you happy. No amount of status will make up for what you're lacking. There is not an answer to this question that you're asking. So maybe go dancing, maybe go dancing. Had plenty of time to face your fears, but the last 5 years seem to deserve.
Okay, so this is kind of what I meant. I thought maybe I could bring you along with me as we do some of our really just maintenance around our property, and that be kind of what my videos consist of for the most part during the busier times of the seasons, or rather the year anyway. So I got these thinking I would tie my tomatoes onto them for them to climb. They're quite a bit shorter than I thought they would be, but nonetheless, I think they will add some stability either way. They'll probably need to be switched out sooner than later, but I can always move them over to a smaller plant and just get larger ones for the growing tomatoes. So whenever I get yarn that I don't necessarily love to knit with, I will just try to figure out other uses for them. And in this case, it is for tying up the tomatoes. Now, if you've been with us for the last few videos, you may recognize that the garden looks a little bit different as far as the fence goes. I'm not sure if the camera is even picking it up, but we ended up taking down the jute fence. We get so much rain. I can imagine if you didn't get a whole lot of rain that it may work okay, but for some reason every time the rain would come in, it would expand and contract and it would get all tangled up, and it just wasn't working. It was too much bother for what it was worth, and so we just ended up replacing it for an exponentially cheaper option, and right now we're extremely happy with it. So time will tell. I'll give you an update on that when we've used it a little longer. I know it's hard to find a way through when the current is fighting you. So maybe you should do what makes you happy. Forget all those lessons that you learned and just go dancing. Life is much too short for you to miss it as it's passing. So don't let it happen. Don't let it happen. No. Lola, Silas, and I went to pick up some stain the other day, and we happened upon their newly stocked plant section, and can I say I was just truly overwhelmed with joy. I had to hold myself back because I couldn't believe how many plants were there that used to be rare, and plants that I actually had shipped across countries in order to receive, and now they are available down the road from me in just the most massive plants. And the ones that I received, I was just super excited to even get my hands on a starter version of them. So anyway, the plant world, if you are in it, you know what I'm talking about, and it is definitely some exciting times going on. That said, I thought I could talk about what I do when I am looking to purchase a plant, how I kind of distinguish between which ones I will choose for myself and what I do when I bring it home. And this is the one that I actually purchased from the store. This is a Philodendron gloriosum. And y'all, this was on my wish list for years. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure it is a hybrid. I can't remember what it's a hybrid of. If y'all know, let me know in the comment section. But when I saw this in a big box store, I about flipped a lid. There were other ones as well. Like, I actually have it right here, the billitai. That used to be an extremely rare plant. I got mine when it was really little, and I was so excited to even get my hands on the tiniest little starter. And so they actually had massive billitis there. I had to just hold myself back. But anyway, so let's talk about how I choose between which plants I am going to buy when you've got so many of one variety and you're trying to pick the best one for yourself. So the first thing that I always do when deciding which plant I'm going to get, and before I bring it home, I inspect the bottoms. Well, I inspect the entire plant altogether, but the bottoms of the leaf is a lot of times where a lot of the little pests like to hide. And you can do a really great inspection and still they will have laid their eggs in the dirt or in a place that's inconspicuous that you can't see. So when you do bring them home and after you have inspected them, if you have other plants, I never set them by my established home plants because the pests have a tendency to spread. I usually wait a couple weeks and continually check it out and make sure I don't see any pests before I will put them anywhere near my other plants. So, when picking which one I want to choose, a lot of times I will look at how many little starters they have. If they've got more than one plant growing out of the bottom of the dirt, then it's more bang for your buck. Also, like to look if there is any new growth on the plant. That lets me know that the plant is happy and thriving and it is pushing out new growth. Don't be afraid of your plants. You take them outside of their nursery pots. One of the benefits that they are in a nursery pot, and another reason why I like to keep them in the nursery pot, is because I can continually inspect them when I have them in my care. So I look for the bottom, and then this one's, I have a mic in my hand, but normally I will slide the plant out and look whether or not it is root bound. More times than not, these are pretty young plants and they are not root bound. You can tell if they're root bound if you've got roots just wrapping tightly around the base of the dirt. And sometimes they will actually come out of the bottom holes of the plant and start wrapping around that area. That lets you know that it is time to replace the nursery pot and repot it. My mic's died, so I'm gonna do my best to get closer to the camera so you can hear me a little better. So my process is don't do more than you really need to do. There's already enough to be done, and I don't want to create work where there need not be. And so going back to not repotting your plant unless it's root bound, here's what you do. When you come home, I'm telling you this, like you have to do this. This is just what I would recommend. So the nursery pot is here. This is how the plant came. In case you're wondering, this is a Monstera Standleyana albo variegata. Anything with the word variegata or variegated basically just means that there is going to be variegation in the leaves. You can see here. Also, these are becoming a lot more available now. When I got this, it was more rare. I actually saw this inside of Target the other day and I was like, what? But I did, actually it was at Walmart last year as well, which was pretty crazy. But anyway, if you want one of these are pretty easy to find and they are pretty easy to care for. These kind of talk to you and let you know when they're thirsty by the curling of their leaves. You can see they're starting to kind of curl within themselves, and that's how you know that it needs a drink. Obviously, you can stick your finger in and feel if it is dry. I'll go on to when to water in just a second. If you're wondering what these are, this is basically a wick that soaks up water. It's kind of a self-watering mechanism. I don't like them. I don't use them. I just ended up keeping it on, but I don't let it sit in water, so it doesn't matter. It basically is a way to keep the dirt constantly moist. I don't like that because I find that my plants' root systems are a lot more healthy if I let them dry out in between waterings. Now, this doesn't go for 100% of my plants, but for the most part, and for all the plants that I just mentioned, this is the case. Again, I'll go back to that in a second. I will say, as a little side note, when you purchase the ones that are variegated, and if you purchase them because they are variegated, if you want to keep that pretty variegation, you want to make sure that they get as much light as possible without getting direct light. Direct light is going to burn the leaves that are white But if you don't give them enough light, they are going to revert back. You can see I don't really care about the variegation that much. I more so had a place I wanted this to go and just give it enough light to be pretty happy, not to stay highly variegated. But you can see that it used to be a lot more variegated, and it is starting to revert back and not have hardly any at all. If you want to keep that variegation, you want to stick it in a window or as close to light as possible and as much light as possible without it receiving direct sunlight. This I actually left on when I was caring for my plants. I would have normally clipped this. This is called a runner. Definitely on this variety, these very seldom will produce any type of leaves. I don't like the way that it looks, and in my opinion, it's giving a lot of nutrients to something that isn't that visually appealing. So I normally just give that a trim. But yeah, so if you've got little runners like these, I personally would recommend cutting them and allowing that energy and nutrients to push out new leaves instead of just making this runner longer. I'm trying to remember if I'm covering the subject that I even started in the first place. Oh, I did not. Okay, so anyway, so you bring your nursery pot home. I was talking about whether or not you want to repot them. What I really recommend and what I do is I keep them inside of their nursery pots. If you don't have to, I would not repot them. Another reason why I like to keep them inside of their nursery pots is because like I said previously, I can check on the root systems. When it is time to repot them, it is much easier to switch out the nursery pot than it is to try to pry them out of a fixed pot. This is movable and bendable, and I'm a lot less likely to damage the roots by switching out the nursery pot to a nursery pot than like I said, a pot that is completely fixed in place where I have to just dig out the plant itself. So this is what I do. I put my nursery pot inside of a pretty. So there's also several practical reasons for sticking the nursery pot inside of a prettier vessel, because when you water, you want to make sure that you're able to see that all the water has drained out. You're much more likely to overwater a plant than underwater a plant. Root rot is one of the most common ways of killing a plant. Root rot occurs when the plant's roots are sitting in the water for far too long. And one way you can avoid this is by giving it a water, letting all the water drain completely through. And then if you've got extra water in your pot, just go ahead and dump it out. Now, if it is a smaller plant, one of the things I like to do is water this over the sink and let it finish dripping out, and then put it back inside of the pretty pot. Another advantage of watering over the sink is that you are able to also rinse off all the leaves. You don't want dust to collect, and this is one way to prevent that from happening. One of the reasons why you don't want dust collecting is that it prevents the plant from absorbing the sun's rays. So you probably are wondering, well, when do I water it? So I like to wait until there's a few of my plants that kind of, you can see the leaves start to turn in on itself. This one's getting close, it's not quite there. When I'm questioning myself and I'm looking at it and I see, okay, the leaves are starting to curl in on itself. And then the next thing I'll do is I will stick my finger in the dirt of the soil and see whether or not I can feel any moisture. And that I've literally, in plants, we're also we've also got some drop up. We've also got some drop. Yeah.
No, stop.
One that would be more of a taking down.